there's a country in there that you can't name, and you called it Falcon.
Right.
Can I guess what Falcon is?
Absolutely. You're expected to guess. I would not show up here without expecting you to guess. Good guess. Every guess is a good guess, so I'll say good guess.
So, can you lay out for people like, or give like a brief summary of like what happened and how you got into working in that country, and then what specifically you and your wife were doing, because you guys got teamed up?
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start really brief, and I'll let you ask whatever questions you want. But in essence, my wife was very, very successful at CIA. She was a shit hot officer. That's just like I told you here at the end. She's when she gets involved, shit happens. I was a fucking shit show at CIA, which is what's hilarious to me about all these people who accuse me of all sorts of stuff online. Like they've never heard the truth. The truth is I was a horrible CIA officer. I didn't play by the rules. I pissed people off. Like I was not cut out for military or CIA. Because I wasn't good, quote unquote, good at following instructions, I got all the shit jobs. So I was out there talking to extremists and pedophiles and, weapons smugglers. Like I was doing shitty operations that your really successful people weren't doing. My wife was doing all the really important operations. So we meet at CIA, we fall in love, and we start to date. And now we're approaching marriage. And at the same time that we're getting ready to get married, CIA identifies they have a mole inside the agency, a mole that they've never disclosed to the public, a mole that was advised to them not even by their own internal group. An allied country sent us a message that said, hey, we have intel.
That you have a mole.
That you have a problem.
Where was the mole specifically?
Inside CIA, inside one of CIA's most sensitive intelligence collection we call houses.
Was this an officer out in the field, or was this somebody like in Langley?
They didn't know at the time. They didn't know if it was a person in Langley or a person in the field, but what they knew is that the person was highly connected because they were able to get information that was of like leadership plans and intentions. It was a high-placed asset, a high-placed mole.
And this is not the person you're talking about in the beginning of the book who ends up getting a private contracting job for a bank.
That is the same person.
Recruited. Okay, that is the person.
So every case in CIA is encrypted, and we have a specific way that we encrypt. I wanted to tell everybody what that specific way was that we encrypt assets, but of course CIA wouldn't let me. So we use code names in the book to kind of give you a sense of that. So the code name for the mole is Scimitar. Scimitar is identified. CIA learns of Scimitar from an allied power that says, hey, you have a problem. You have an asset. You have a mole inside your agency, meaning a sworn U.S. intelligence officer is giving secrets to a foreign country. And the foreign country is Falcon, and Falcon is one of our largest, most strategic adversaries. You've made your guess. Other people have made other guesses. One of our largest, most strategic. Yes. So CIA has a problem. CIA needs to fix this problem, but the problem is magnified because how are you going to fight this mole? You don't know who the mole is.
Can I ask you one quick yes or no question?
Yeah.
Does Falcon have nuclear weapons?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of nuclear weapons out there, but
there's a lot.
We'll keep going.
It down.
So CIA has to find a mole in Falcon House, which means they don't know who the mole is, but they know the mole is in Falcon House, so they can't trust anybody in Falcon House. So when they go to build new operations, they can't look inside their own most talented division. They have to look outside of the division, and they have to look for people who have no reason to have ever been connected to any high-stakes operations. And that's how they find my dumbass, right? Chasing files and gun runners. And they find my wife, who's doing super sexy stuff in a completely different part of the agency. So they find the two of us and they bring us in and they're like, we need the two of you who are about to get married. We need you to build new operations. It was because we were not part of Falcon House. Therefore, there was a very low likelihood we were connected to the mole. There was almost no likelihood that we were the mole. So we were trustworthy because we were outsiders.
Interesting. And you talk about using like Al-Qaeda style tactics. Can
Correct.
you explain that?
Yeah. So CIA followed one very specific, what we call modus operandi, MO, for intelligence collection. And it's been the same MO since the Cold War. Basically, you send people in to a country, they make friends, and they steal secrets. And then all of those secrets go through a big bureaucratic funnel all the way to the top of the agency, where they're then added to the president's daily brief and briefed to the president. You know as much intelligence as you have a need to know. But as you go up the chain of command, the people at the top of the chain of command have the most need to know.
So they have the full picture.
So the higher you get in leadership, the more vulnerable all the operations of CIA are, because if you become a mole, you have access to everything. So Falcon House, who was under significant pressure because they had a mole, they had a penetration, they were having problems with operations. They were like, we have to find a way to fix this. So when they called us in, they were like, we need you, Andy and Jihi, we need you guys to create a new method of operating that controls the flow of information so that we can still give the president intelligence, but we can also protect the sources and methods that we use to get that intelligence. That's like an impossible task. We learned in our training program the same way everybody else learned. Like you can't teach somebody algebra and then say, we need you to find a new way of doing algebra. You can't even conceptualize it, right? So when they sent us on this operation, my wife and I were sitting together. We were like, how the f are we going to do this thing? Like, I assumed we were sent on an operation just destined to fail. Like, there's no way we're going to succeed. I'm already a f up. Now they're just ruining your career too. Yeah. But my wife was like, no, they must have sent us for a reason. We must be smart enough. We must be good enough. And so there were lots of fights over dinner where I was like, we're just here to waste our time. And she was like, no, we're here to make a difference. And then it struck her. She was like, you know what we could do? We could just copy terrorist operations and use them for CIA collection, because the United States had been fighting a global war on terror for the last 10 years.
Right.
Nobody else was fighting a war on terror. Russia wasn't, Iran wasn't, North Korea wasn't, China wasn't, nobody. So what we had learned from Al-Qaeda was basically our intellectual property. Nobody else had learned anything about how they operated. So we could mimic terrorist cell activity and essentially be a brand new threat to all of our enemies.
And what about like transferring information? And like, because I'm assuming if there's a mole, you don't know where it is. You don't know if it's in the field, if it's outside Langley, if it's in the office, it could potentially have access to like cables coming in and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So like, what process do you even take to sort of like A, protect information so a mole can't get access to it and you don't even know who the mole is,
right,
and B, find the mole?
So once we identified that there might be something to the decentralized process of terrorist operations, it's really important that you understand, at least superficially, how a bureaucracy works. I think we all know how bureaucracy works. If you've been to public school, you know how bureaucracy works, right? President knows, or the principal knows everything. The vice principal sucks the principal's toes, and then everybody else is f***ed. That's basically how bureaucracy works everywhere. So when we had the way terrorists work is the principal doesn't know anything except an attack has been successful. Everything about the preceding decisions for that attack, they don't know about.
Oh, really?
Because the principal knows he's target number one. Osama bin Laden knew he was target number one. So all he had to do was approve attacks. He didn't have to plan them. He didn't have to know when, where, how, right, who, whatever. He just had to say yes. So he had underlings and underlings and underlings, and different cells would plan different types of attacks. Run the suggestion would go up the chain through a courier, and the courier would say, hey, cell A wants to blow up a train in London. Cell B wants to attack an airport in, Kuwait, whatever. And then all the person above them had to do is say yes or no. And then the biggest successful attacks would basically continue going up the chain. So everybody in leadership didn't know anything about the details of what was happening underneath. Each cell of 12 to 15 radicals, they were completely dedicated to their operation. You've heard of the term sleeper cell. That's what a sleeper cell is. A sleeper cell is a cell of people who know that one day they might be activated, but they don't know who each other are. And when they're activated, they make all of their decisions internally, fully decentralized. Wow. So we were like, well, what if we did that from within CIA? What if we made a cell where we made all of our own decisions, right? And all we told leadership was the final plan. We didn't look for their guidance. We didn't look for their support. We didn't look for their anything. We were just looking for their approval, basically. And then the way that
That's a great way to stovepipe stuff.
Correct.
Keep it secret.
And that's if you're trying to protect yourself against a mole and you don't know where that mole is.
Yes.
The stovepipe is the best way to go.
And how'd you find the mole?
We didn't find the mole. So when we were put on the mission, we were told after we had gotten deep into it, we were told afterwards, hey, by the way, there's a mole out there. And the mole is messing things up and we need you to fix things. That was a very important part of the story because had they told us there's a mole, you need to fix things, and we're going to use you fixing things as bait to bait the mole. Had they been transparent like that, we would not have had a First Amendment right because we would have agreed essentially.
Right.
So instead, our lived experience made it so that we didn't know what was going on. And there's no evidence, or else if there was evidence that they would have told us, then that would have not made it through the review board, right?
And did the mole get caught?
The mole ended up being caught as a result of not just our operation, but because of multiple other operations that were happening compartmentalized in adjacent to us. And so jumping to the end kind of a little bit, the mole was arrested, I think in 2019, possibly 2017. I'm not sure.
Was this public? Like, was it in the news?
It was public in the Department of Justice, like archives, which are publicly available.
There was no headlines though.
Because the headlines are not, headlines are a little bit more controlled than we think they are.
They are?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, because it's really easy to publish something and not tap a journalist on the shoulder, right? And anyways, so the mole was ultimately arrested, but the mole was arrested after we had already left CIA. So we were not actively involved in the effort to arrest the mole. We basically just served our operational purpose, and then the mole was kind of tracking us. And we didn't find out about it until after the fact.
Wow. That's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. And I can see why CIA would do that because, frankly speaking, it's exactly what I would do if I was a senior leader at CIA. You don't want...
Of course.
You don't want to warn the people because that's going to distract them from their mission.
Right.
It also makes sense because what we did with our shadow cell was just one new experiment. It would have made total sense for them to have 2 or 3 other teams of officers, some married, some dating, some gay, some friends, who knows, but multiple other people out experimenting also because you're putting out more bait. When you go fishing, unless you're a very skilled fisherman, right? When I go on a charter boat fishing trip, because I'm a dumbass fisherman, the first thing they always do is throw a bunch of chum in the water to bring the fish in. So that's all we were. We were just chum.